We're switching it up for the Working Fans podcast. You know, we love talking wrestling, but a thing that I think we like talking about a little more than wrestling is putting over other people. If we know other creators, if we know other companies. And this is a man you've heard with us before. We are happy to have him back. Jewett City Boy himself, author Jake St. John. We are talking the 13th round today. Hit up Jake St. John for these great shirts. Jake, how you doing tonight? We're doing a virtual reading. I'm happy to have you here. Talk a little bit about the 13th round before we get into these poems.
So the 13th round kind of came about the last couple of years. I had a handful of poems hanging around, and I didn't really know what to do with them. So I started organizing, putting some poems together real loosely, and really was trying to make it work. And I always like to have like a concept throughout the book. And I was having a real tough time, and I kind of got something together and figured it out. And it was a concept, but it was kind of like one of those, if you use your imagination, squint and look real close, there might be some kind of linear connection. So one night when I was putting it all together, I was talking with the fantastic New Orleans poet, one of the folks with Matt Amat and Julie Valin, Todd Cirillo down in New Orleans. I was telling him what was going on, and he said, "Well, when you get it together, send it down to me." So I said, "All right." So now, to understand my appreciation to Todd, like, this guy just writes the perfect poetry, like poetry that I want to read. Any book that Todd puts out, I've always felt was written for somebody like me. That's how close I feel to the images that he puts together. So I sent him this book, and he's got a great eye. He's always able to fill in the gaps of my work. So I send it to him, and a couple of days goes by, and then he gets back in touch with me, and he says, "Hey, you do have a book here, but it's not the book that you thought that you had." So he said, I kind of gave you some notes on what to do. So I took a look, and I was just blown away by what he was able to pull out of what I sent him. And I was like, holy smokes, I can't believe he's right. This is the book right here. So that kind of started it. And then as I was working on it, he said, if you don't have a press for this, I'd like you to send it to 6 Foot Swells so we could take a look at it. I was real happy to hear that, because Todd being somebody that I admire, and Julie and Matt too, to have 6 Foot Swells press ask me for a book was really just something I was working for, because this book really was put together with the idea, like, imagine if I could put together a book that 6 Foot Swells would be proud of. So it all kind of came together in a perfect way.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I wanted you to kind of shout out Todd Cirillo and 6 Foot Swells at the top of this. And I wanted to keep it on the part that everybody's going to see, and you kind of explained it there, how as the artist, you kind of had the germ of the idea, and then you had this company that was willing to put it out, but helped you shape what you wanted to do and made it, what it is. And you've been putting out books like crazy over the last couple of years. It was, it's always cool when you give us the exclusive scoop. Like, hey, we got this coming out. I can't wait to do this. You've got some great poems in here. We like putting out the people's art that we talk with, but we like letting people know where they can get it. So what would you like
they can go, I'll send you the link, but they can go to 6 Foot Swells Press. They can go to barnesandnobles.com, Amazon, bookshop.org, and I'll send you all those links too. But Jake St. John, 13th round, will come up even if you do a Google search. So if you want the book, we'll get it in your hands.
That is awesome. Now, you're going to be reading a selection of poems from this today. Why don't you give us the first poem and tell us a little bit about it going into it?
So this is the title poem for the collection, the 13th round. I think it speaks for itself. I think we all kind of know how this feels. The 13th round, the title poem from the collection, 6 Foot Swells Press. The 13th round. The rejection letters and bills connect with a flurry of stiff right hands. The whiskey jabs my senses, and the day's news delivers an uppercut. I stagger back to my corner, grab my pen and paper, and wait for the bell to ring again. That's the 13th round.
Great poem. Now, when you start getting collections of poems, or like, what's your writing process like? Do you try and write every day? Do you wait for when the inspiration hits you? How do you work through that?
I have had different experiences with writing. I have tried to sit down and write a poem, and it doesn't usually work that well. Usually what happens is I'll be doing something. I'll be working. I'll be driving down the highway. I'll be mowing the lawn, and all of a sudden I'll get a word in my head, and the word will turn into a phrase, and then the phrase kind of turns into a couple of phrases getting kicked around in my head until I got a voice reciting a poem to me while I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and it won't get out until I write it down in a little notebook, or sometimes I'll even open my phone and just do a quick voice to text to anybody. Whoever's at the top, the last text I sent, I'll click on it and shoot it in there. So the words come, they kind of come upon themselves, like there's a poetry reading happening, and it's going to continue until I can get it out of my head. Usually this is a result. You can't write if you're not reading. So I do try to read a lot, and a lot of times it happens. The more I read, the more I'll get pen to paper, if you will, which doesn't always happen. Got to fill the gas tank. Kay McDonough told me that. So it tends to come in flurries, but it comes in my head, and then I've got to get it out on paper.
And are you reading poetry during that time, or is it just reading whatever and the inspiration comes from what you read?
Yeah, most of the time it's poetry, but I usually have a novel going as well. If I'm reading Kerouac, sometimes he's got a lot of fun turns, phrases, and unique takes on words. So a lot of times he's always been an inspiration. It could be music. Listening to a Doors song and Morrison wails something out, and be like, oh man, and then things start rolling. So it really is anywhere. It can even be a street sign or an advertisement in a bar. It does come from everywhere, but it's usually I'm reading poetry or something of the sort.
It's almost like the greatest comedians, songwriters, poets tell you, live a life worth talking about, and then your experiences will form what you read about. I was just asking because I was wondering if you stay away from poetry. Do you find if you read other poets that there's something you're gleaming from their style, or are you just taking in the art and seeing what it does in you?
No, I'm always reading other poets. I'm reading Todd Cirillo, William Taylor Jr., Bretton Booth, John Greiner, so many different poets. And I feel terrible right now because I missed out on I'm sure 10 or 15 other poets. Al Winans.
I'll have you shout out other people. Oh, we'll come back to it later in the episode. So I'll have you shout out more poets, because it's not like you're intentionally forgetting anybody. But if you're ever put on the spot asking, who do you like for this? You want to give the first things that come to mind. But then you think about other things that you're like, oh, I didn't mean to leave this person off or that person off.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different people that I could thank for a poem, a book, a stanza. There's just a lot that resonates with you, and not all at the same time. Different periods of your life, you're realizing the art in something you might not have seen prior. So
yeah, 100%. Shout out to Ham Jammers. What is the next poem you got up for us today, and why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
This is a hometown Jewett City poem. This is kind of captures what it was like growing up in Jewett City on the farm. Our World Series. When we were kids, we played wiffle ball all summer on my grandparents' farm. Another game 7 would start each morning. We'd hit home runs over the barnyard fence, Hall of Fame catches down the line by the old oak tree, or we'd strike out as the ball ricocheted off the lawn chair backstop. We'd drink water pumped from the well, and we'd laugh together because life was as good as it could be. Then, one morning, with no warning, there were no more summer games, no more home runs, no diving catches, stolen bases, or laughter. For some of us, that summer was the closest we'd ever come to any sort of victory. Our World Series.
That was great hearing a Jewett City poem, because I was actually hanging out with a friend of Jesse, and he saw I was wearing my 13th round hoodie that day. And he looks at it, he's like, Jake St. John? Was he was the one on our like farm system team. And it's like, I forget about some of those times who I was on the team with. But, you know, like Dan Johnston, Enemy will always bring it up. Or, you know, Jesse. And I live in town, so like I'm always around it. But it's great to hear people from here celebrating it, whether it's Enemy shouting it out in a song or you doing a poem about it. I love hearing that. Now, when you come back to Jewett City, where are your must-go stops? Because I ate at Pizza Palace today, and I feel like I got to shout them out. There is Jewett City as it comes.
Yeah, so love Pizza Palace. When I get to Jewett City, and I've said this many, many times, I've been around the country a few times, and if I could have a breakfast anywhere, it's at Dean's Corner. I'm getting scrambled eggs, 2 wheat toast. I'm getting my bacon crispy, and I'm getting my home fries deep fried. And that, I don't know, the food is fantastic there. I've been going there with my father since it opened, so it does have some nostalgia to me. But it's that's one of my must stops if I'm there in the morning. If not, Pizza Palace, you're right, is they've always been a killer family. They've always done a lot for the community. So those two places.
And that's not slighting Charlene's Diner or
not at all. Not at all.
These are just our preferences. I bet Jake's been going to Dean's Corner since it was Ed's Corner.
Yeah, I will tell you, my father would bring Mike Keeman and me. Our schedules in the morning going to school were about the same. And there are many times my father would bring me into Cliff's Corner. Cliff's Corners, Ed's Corners. I've been going there since the 80s. So I've seen I was there when you could buy fishing lures, cigars, magazines, get a lotto ticket, and a bite to eat. So
I got to ask, this is a little wrestling crossover. Did you ever get your WCW comics from Ed's Corner?
I'm not sure I ever got my WCW comics from Ed's Corner, but I did have a cup of coffee with Bob Backlund at Dean's Corner. Yeah.
And we got a lot of love for the 13th round. You can find it. You said 6footswellspress.com, Amazon.com. How good does it feel to have your book out pretty much anywhere where you can buy a book? It's
a really good feeling, you know, I'm always proud of all my books, but just this one in particular, the way it came about is really fantastic. And the fact that it's available in so many places is just really, it's kind of like one of those things where you're like, all right, that's really cool. Like, I can't believe I did that. Like, there were many times where I was going through, Todd would send me notes back, and I was like, holy smokes. Like, this is really cool the way it's all panning out. Like, so it is a good feeling. I'm very appreciative and grateful of the process.
Nice. Now, what poem do you have for us next?
I figured I'd stick with the Jewett City theme. This one is so way back when my brother and I were living together down in New Haven. We took a class together, and one of the requirements was that we had to do community service. So we decided to do community service at the Jewett City Senior Center. And this is a poem that came out of it about a gentleman that I just took to. He was a real cool dude. Name of the poem's Community Service from 13th Round. Community service. Every day down at the center, slinging meals and packing food trucks, we listen to conspiracy theories from the guy they call Ponytail. We'd unwillingly get caught in gossip from one of the ladies who could still dance, and did. I'd see Walter shooting pool, quietly nodding and smiling at the folks passing through the front door. I'd grab a stick and ask him how he was doing, and he'd laugh and say, "I'm still kicking, just not as high." He'd tell me how he won everyone else's cigarettes on an army base, taking a Russian heavyweight to the cards at 160 pounds. He knocked me down, but he couldn't keep me down. Years later, Walter waltzed into the liquor store I was working at on the other side of town. He strolled through the door. "Hey, kid," and grabbed a beer. He'd just gotten out of the hospital and was staying with a nephew who drove him to appointments. As he walked out the door and fell into the passenger seat, he raised his can my way in an invisible toast and called out, "I'm still kicking." And today, I'd like to believe he still is. And that's to Walter, community service, the 13th round.
Wow. Sorry, I had myself on mute there, but talk about a poem that has imagery, and then I can't think of a more Jewett City story, because I can see this dude getting the beer, getting into his car, immediately cracking it. And it has things that, like, when I talk to other people about Jewett City, they laugh about, but then when I'm like, that's my hometown, that's just how we are. Like, I really like the imagery in that. And how much does Jewett City form what you do in poetry? Because you did another book that was primarily New London, so how does different places you've lived affect how you write?
I think it's all the experience that you have. But when I was younger, living in New London in that scene, it was easy to write about what was going on around me in New London. And then as as COVID progressed and different things happened and things like that, it was easy to write about what's around you. But now I'm at an age where I feel comfortable with who I am, and that kind of gives a little more freedom to write about all these things. And a lot of the things that a younger man might be embarrassed about dirty laundry or falling down the stairs, tripping over dogs and things like that, that a younger man might get a bruised ego over. Now I'm at the point where if you're going to be honest, you're going to be honest. So write about everything. And that really opens it up to a lot of situations in my developmental years when I was younger, growing up in Jewett City. So there's a lot more stories that are being able to get filtered and get drummed up. So it's Jewett City something, the Nightfall of Diamonds book, primarily written at a fort on the edge of the woods on St. John Road and up at Mount Misery and Patchogue. So there is a lot of Jewett City in my poems, even if it's not explicitly said. Like, you can't run from where you're from. So
yeah, you kind of are who you are. And how long did it really take you to get comfortable with who you are? Because I think that's one of the greatest struggles we go through as people is, you kind of, as you grow and progress, you learn who you are. But then there's a matter of getting used to it and getting comfortable with it. And it seems like the people that get comfortable earlier, do better with it. So when did it hit you, and kind of how's that process been?
Probably in the last 7 years or so, I would say, like turning the clock over to 40 and progressing from there. And you're not a kid anymore, but you're not an old man either. You're kind of right there in between, so you're able to kind of take all things in and kind of sit back and understand the important things that are going on in life, and that it is okay to laugh at yourself, and it's not don't take life too seriously, because we're all going to the same place,
100%. And I feel like the older I get, when I work with younger people or when I'm around younger people, I see how they act, and I 100% get what they're going through, kind of why they're acting like that. But with perspective, you can be like, oh, wow, like, you really grow through that. Or it makes you think of a time when you acted like that, and you're like, Christ, how far have I come from that? And it's interesting, the older you get, the more perspective you kind of end up with.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it all the time. I remember being at poetry readings when I was in my early 20s and talking to the old head poets, and they would be saying things. I remember when I was in that stage. And I'm like, come on, what are you talking about? And then, like, as years went on, it's like, wait a minute, you're gradually creeping along the same highway that they are now. I understand what they were saying. So it's all experience, it's once you're able to humble yourself, and there's nothing better than nobody's better than anybody. We're all in this for the same thing, where we're just trying to get by, and if we can help each other, that's a cool thing. And when you realize that we're all at the same point, then just smile, have fun. We're here for a short time. Let's have a good time.
You create all these differences in your mind between you and other people, but everybody's struggle is more or less the same. it's just from their own eyes. And I forgot what I was going to say because we got deep with it. But I like this chance to kind of talk a little bit about more about life because I feel like poetry really comes from that. Now, do you have any poems that were written during COVID that you haven't released that kind of, have that feeling of that time? Or have they all kind of filtered out into some project or another?
Yeah, most of that era is in my book, Night Full of Diamonds, the Whiskey City Press book. That book came together fairly quick during COVID because there wasn't a lot you could do. So I was doing a lot of reading, a lot of hiking, a lot of output at that point. So that one, that kind of contains a vast majority of the COVID poems. And like we're just talking about, seeing everybody kind of goes through the same things. And I think that's the point that a lot of my poetry I'm trying to get to is that if I can tell you my experience and maybe you can say, oh, something like that happened to me and I understand what you're feeling about. And there's a connection to be made, that's to me, that's exciting when somebody else can read my poem and go, I know what you were feeling, or I know exactly how that happened. You know what I mean? Like, so that seeing life through other people's eyes is really cool. So it's fun when they can see life through the poetry.
100%. And it's where you find you kind of bridge that gap with a lot of people when you find that common ground. And even if you can't see eye to eye with somebody on everything, if you can see eye to eye with them on one thing, then there is that human connection and you can understand them to some degree.
All right. So this poem, this will be one more Jewett City poem, Dance Lesson. She was blonde and older than me. We were both at a junior high school dance, standing in opposite corners of the gymnasium talking to friends. She walked through the sound-activated shadows and asked me to dance. Wide-eyed and off balance, I nodded and was shoved out and into her arms. I stepped back and forth, butchered her feet, smiled awkwardly. We danced to an unbelievably slow song. I questioned her between riffs. I thought you weren't interested. She leaned in close to my ear and whispered, I'm not, but your friends don't know that. Tell them you turned me down. And as I climbed my stairway to heaven and waltzed back to the wall of questioning friends, I did just that. This next one...
Hold on. I just want to jump in there for a second because there's some imagery in there. We are not going to name names, but I'm assuming that was a specific incident.
Yeah, it's a shoot, brother.
I can kind of feel it, and it's not the only blonde that ruined somebody's life here in middle school. So let's get to the next one. Actually, that girl was in high school. You know who you are.
All right, so this is the last one for this portion. This was a night in Ketchum. Now I got a whole night of stories behind this poem, but a night in Ketchum. I was turned around and out of my mind the night I found Hemingway's grave. In a stupor, I stumbled the street and visited every bar still operating that he drank in. In one joint, I pulled up a stool, ordered a cocktail, traveled back to 1952. Neon lights, mixed drinks, reliving memories I never had. Then I crossed the street and drank with a retired couple from Massachusetts. We watched the Red Sox game at Whiskey Jacques, my namesake. My actual birth certificate lists Jacques St. Jean as my legal name. Anyway, I decided then and there that I'd drink a rum and coke with Papa anytime. No guns, though. That's where I draw the line. The 13th round, 6-foot swells. Grab a copy, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org. 6-foot swells press.
Yeah, look in the description. We will have all the links there for you. Jake, thank you for joining us again. We put this together because Jake has been trying to get live readings in places, and we've wanted to help push that along because it was kind of a throwback to COVID in a way where I'm like, fuck it, let's do a digital recording, let's put it up. Obviously, if you're checking this out on Patreon, you're going to get the full unedited version. You're going to get the bonus poems, but whether you join the Patreon or not, you have to check out Jake St. John's books. He has a bunch of poetry books out. You've heard a selection of it here. The stuff he hasn't read is that much better. So, Jake, shout out who you want to shout out. Promote what you want to promote, even though you just did a little bit. And we'll get into the bonus portion.
I want to, I've been talking about 6 Foot Swells. Todd Cirillo, poet and editor, fantastic. Matt Amott, poet, editor, artist, fantastic visual artist. He's also part of the press. Julie Valin, fantastic. She designed the cover. Fantastic poet in her own right. There's so many other poets and everything, but I want to thank you, Producer Joe. You and the Working Fans have been there your whole run. You've always had a hand helping me up. So I always appreciate everything that you and Man They Call Dave and AJ and everybody affiliated. So I always appreciate the time that you give me, the support you give me. So that's what I wanted to say.
No problem. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. Let's speak it into existence. If you could get readings at the stores that you want to get readings at, what are some of your dream shoot for the moon places that you'd like to get in?
Oh man, if I'd be happy reading in town here at Folk and Fable, just being local would be fantastic. Dream would be out in San Francisco, take the show on the road. Down in New York, which that's something that is always at the front of my mind, reading down in New York. I'll be reading in New York at Gonzo Fest next summer. But I'd like to read in some of the local stores in the area, in the New England area, up in Providence, Connecticut, New York, obviously. So I'd like to get anybody that'll have me, I'm in.
If I'm not mistaken, they just opened a store in the Slaterville Mall, I believe.
I had some conversations with the gentleman over at Fang Bookstore. We talked about doing something. We're going to look into a venue possibly. I haven't been into town to check out the store, but I definitely want to get there. It's Fang's Books Unlimited or something like that. But they're in the Slater Mill Mall. Go check them out. Support. You gotta support local indie bookshops, But yeah, so that might be something down the pike too.
100%. And Jake, once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you everybody for watching us. I've got a quick 38-second commercial. We're gonna play it for a wrestling book, and when we come back, it's gonna be the Patreon portion. We're gonna get a couple more bonus poems from Jake. And then we're going to let this man go eat his pizza because we want to support him, but we want him to eat. So check out this other author that we get down with.
Author Ray Lopez presents Lockup, Professional Wrestling in Our World. Lockup dives headfirst into the colorful world of professional wrestling. Explore the iconic characters, careers, matches, history, and families, and delve into the bizarre and fascinating entwining of professional wrestling and film, television, football, politics, gender, and race. Pre-orders are available now on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com. This is the perfect gift for the wrestling fan in your life. Pick up a copy today on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com.